Moving on to the Colorado Buffaloes, and there's no denying that while Colorado might be able to replicate or at least get close to replicating their win total, they're probably not going to have as much star power as they had the last couple of years. Shedeur Sanders is gone. The Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, is also gone, and they returned just 50% of their production. That's 89th in college football. Just 44% returns on offense. That is 99th. So a lot of pieces to replace on the offensive side, but that should come as no surprise given the personnel and the quality that we got from Shedeur and from Travis by themselves. The recruiting haul wasn't bad. They landed 17 players in the transfer portal. They added 14 high school players. 8 of those 14 were 4-star or better. And there should be a pretty interesting quarterback competition to be had between one of those 4-star players and Juju Lewis and Caden Salter, who comes over after starting 35 games for the Liberty Flames. Now, Salter, I think he's probably going to be the guy. He's got a lot of mobility. He's been in the fire. He's played a lot of football at the college level. So I don't think you go out and get a 3-year starter if you don't expect him to be the guy. He could serve as the bridge guy to Julian Lewis, who might ultimately take over as a sophomore or a redshirt freshman in 2026. But that competition will be something that we watch very closely throughout the spring, summer, and throughout fall camp. But Salter, 35 career games, threw for almost 6,000 yards, threw for almost 60 touchdowns. But what makes him most intriguing is that in those 35 games, he rushed for over 2,000 career yards. So he's very dynamic with the ball in his hands, and he'll be the guy that will probably do an awful lot with his legs. Because if you look at this team last year, and Colorado really the last 2 years, they're one of the worst in the country when it comes to running the football. Last year, they rushed for just over 65 yards a game. That was dead last in the FBS. So whether they go with Salter, whether they go with Lewis, they need to be a little bit more committed to trying to run the football and take some of the pressure off the passing game, because the likelihood of you now having a top 5 pick at quarterback is extremely small. Not impossible, but extremely small. So they're going to take a little bit more off that quarterback's shoulders, whoever ends up winning the job. They did go out and add, I think, a pretty good piece in Zach Atkins, who's making the jump from Northwest Missouri State at tight end. He will be a nice, reliable weapon for whoever the quarterback ultimately ends up being. They still have good personnel at wide receiver. The offensive line should be a little bit better, but there's a lot of question marks with what we're going to get offensively from the Buffaloes. As far as the defense is concerned, I think there's a lot of reason to feel real good about where they're going. Their defense coordinator last year, Coach Livingston, did a great job. Allowed 23 points and just 352 yards a game last season. That is over 100 yards improved from 2023, and that was the best year-over-year improvement in program history. Now, they also had a drop of nearly 12 points per game allowed, which is the best drop defensively that they've had in nearly 40 years, since 1985. So we've got to be really excited about the progress that was made on the defensive side. And hopefully that defense, which returns a little bit more production than the offense, hopefully that defense can hold the fort while the offense kind of finds its footing there in the first month of the season. Colorado led the Big 12 in sacks. They led the Big 12 in tackles for loss. But if you look at what's lost off of last year's team, 8 of the 10 players who started at least 10 games last season are gone. That includes Travis Hunter, who obviously won the Heisman Trophy and was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. So a lot to account for, but there was such progress made, and there was enough players played. They rotated a lot more than they did the year before, that those guys that were rotational pieces last year, now that they're stepping into starting roles, maybe they'll be well positioned to collectively take the next step. Some key games, and they have some tough ones. I think some sneaky tough games, but a lot of their games are at home. Georgia Tech, BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State. They'll be able to get them at altitude and hopefully be able to hold down the fort there in Boulder. Their win total is at 6.5. And to be honest with you, I kind of lean towards the over with where this program is currently heading, even though there's some big names that are gone from the program this past season.